Yeah, I would just say for Otter Tail, we have on the contractor side, trade allies, we have a little bit of a challenge there. We have a very large service territory, and a lot of just small, just two-person operations basically out there installing equipment. So it's really hard to reach out to them and get them engaged. Many times they're so busy that they won't even take on new customers unless it's an emergency. And so we've always struggled in that area. In the last few years, I think we've had a lot more success engaging like CERTs to go out and do some direct installs, some of our small businesses, working with other just vendors to do some of the things and get more boots on the ground in our communities. But on the contractor side, we've had some struggles, so we're still working on it. We still try to do workshops, bring them in, try to educate them, but it has been more challenging.
One of the keys to our successes has been those partnerships we and our members have built with the trade allies. We have, with the retailers, we do a lot of education. We rely on them to help sell the energy efficient equipment to our customers, our mutual customers. When a customer's clothes washer stops working or a motor in a business stops running, the first call is not to us, it's to get that unit replaced by a new one. So we need to make sure that we've got those partnerships in place and they're aware of our programs so they can help sell that efficient technology to the customer. So we do partner with retailers, offer marketing materials and education to them. With trade allies, it's in making sure they're aware of the qualifications of our programs, all the requirements of our programs, so they can, again, help sell that to our mutual customers. We also have, over the last several years now, developed a trade ally database. So we do stay in regular contact via email with them to keep them informed of our programs, changes, things that are coming up, just to keep that communication going, because we are, kind of like some others have said, we're limited in staff, and so we need to really work on these partnerships to help them with what we need to do. So we really work hard to do that.
And I agree with all that. I'll just tailor my comments to going up the value chain. When you think of trade, it's manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers, architects, engineers, and then contractors and installers, and they all have different strategies, and we're trying to align the sale of energy efficiency with all of their strategies, and it's a fun and complex problem. I kind of get jazzed about it, but when you're looking at the manufacturers and distributors, they're making money on equipment. Our programs are very aligned with their strategy of selling more expensive, high efficient equipment. So we can talk to them all day, up to a certain point. Train International does not care what Xcel Energy thinks they should build. But they might care what ACEEE, a national organization, thinks they should build. So you can leverage, a lot of that, or the Department of Energy. We can leverage the relationships we have with those folks, to talk to the international, manufacturers. Distributors, we're there all the time and trying to get them to stock what's more efficient. And they're only going to stock what people are going to buy, so then you have to go down the value chain and get people to draw, to demand that higher efficient equipment. And there's tactics you can use all throughout here. Sometimes there's stocking rebates that we can do. We'll give you a small rebate if you stock more high efficient equipment. And then you get into architect, an engineer, and contractor, and those folks are making money on their time. So you want to get their attention, you kind of have to pay them for their time or get the customer to demand that they look at high efficiency. So it's definitely a multifaceted issue, but it's so important because any of those folks can influence what the customer's going to buy.
Anything else to add?
I just like that you're getting kind of tactical, and I had two approaches that I just wanted to mention from two different of our are members in our alliance. One of them has a contractor ally network, a CAN network. Contractors actually pay in to be a part of that network, so this is a profit center for the utility. But in exchange, the installers are required to attend certain trainings for the technologies that they're installing, kind of continuing education credits, if you will. They also then get leads from energy advisors at the utility that are really specifically tailored to each individual installation company's expertise in the products that they work with. So that's one I think innovative example of a contractor ally network. Another is in a different utility territory where this is specific to their ductless program. You don't get on your list unless you've had most of your staff have like a lunch or breakfast meeting with Todd, who's the manager for their energy efficiency programs, and he comes out to every installer's location, brings them lunch or brings them breakfast, kind of has to prove, demonstrate the value to them, right? Because this is time that they're missing from installing, but he really does make it worth their while. But you can also bet that if you're on that list, you know how the utility program works. The utility knows that you've had training, and there's a really good, solid start to a relationship. So pretty deep, intense relationship, but I think it's really symbiotic in that they're both getting something out of it.
I'm going to go rogue here. I have a question, a follow-up that's not on my approved list. But, as we're talking about new technologies and working with our trade allies and installations, education for our customers, how do utilities think about quality control within their programs and your responsibilities around ensuring that when we are incentivizing new technologies to be installed, that we're not just incentivizing technology for the sake of getting kilowatt hours or therms, but ensuring that there are quality installations and that what we are doing isn't going to cause harm to the customer, and that they're able to use the technologies and benefit from what we're promoting and what we're providing incentive to do and what ultimately they're paying for. You were not prepared to answer that question, so
I can jump in on that one.
Okay.
Because again,
Give the
that's a
utilities
large
a
part of
minute
what
to
I
think.
did. For our alliance both on the ductless heat pump and the heat pump water heater programs, we actually did 100% on-site QA inspection for the first, 1,500 installations on heat pump water heaters and thousands on ductless heat pumps. So it was very valuable in ensuring that those installations were performed at a high level. If they weren't, it was a great opportunity for us to learn and develop best practice installation guides and installer trainings, but also give that feedback direct to manufacturers. So it was really exciting on the heat pump water heaters when that was really being launched, 2009, 2010. Our quality assurance inspections were actually going, the results were getting fed directly to a manufacturer who would evolve the product and changed it 2 to 3 product designs within 1 year based on those inspections. So I guess high level answer is, doing those on-site inspections is a great way to do it. And with technology, we've actually seen some utilities start to do those via smartphone. So you can actually have homeowner, show you some of the things and walk through it, or inspectors show it to more detailed technical people back at an office to evaluate the inspections.
Just a utility comment, so you don't think I'm avoiding you.
I know where to find you. It's okay.
I agree with that. And that's really making sure that the savings that are being claimed are being realized. It's statistically significant sample of what you're being told is installed is actually installed, and I think that's an important QA piece. But technology specific, a lot of it depends on the technology and what's available. But we do rely on testing standards, Department of Energy, wherever we can get a little more assurance that there's been enough industry assurance of what's going to happen. You don't see us often going bleeding edge on technology and just putting something in the marketplace, because we don't want to be in that position of you made a bad recommendation to a customer. That can only go so far. Some of it's in design, and we can't necessarily protect people from bad design. But to the extent that we can gather information and have those assurances, we will. We do pilots a lot and test the technology in a controlled situation. Thermostats is a great example of that. We encourage people to install a smart thermostat, and then we controlled it, a lot more than we would ever historically controlled someone's air conditioner over that period in a controlled environment to kind of stress test a real world situation, to have the assurance that the technology worked, the savings were realized, and the customer satisfaction was then measured to make sure that we weren't giving bad information. So things like that.
Yeah, so just to add to that, Otter Tail Power, our utility, our brand is trust. I mean, that's our biggest piece of our brand. And so we want to make sure that the customer's successful with whatever technology they put in, and customer satisfaction is paramount. And right now, when customers put in a technology and they take that rebate, they have to, check the box that they understand all the terms and conditions, and that allows Otter Tail to come out and inspect the equipment, and we do that, and we sample so much of the equipment out there. But as the technologies become more advanced, we're going to have to do that more and more, and we're going to probably have to rely on some third party at some point in time to do some quality assurance there, and just make sure that it's not only, the customer's not only satisfied, but it is actually operating in the design state to recognize those energy savings.
Okay. All right. I think we are ready to start the Q&A audience portion of our program here. So I think we do have a circulating microphone.
Hi, my name is Eric Kang. I'm very new to this energy conservative. So if my question is naive, I apologize in advance. I want to ask the panel whether the goal of energy efficiency is from the utility company point of view versus you customers, like a homeowner like us, is totally aligned. Because I see, if we save a little bit of utility, we save money. But for utility companies, if they sell more utility, they make a little bit more profit. So I'm not sure if that's totally aligned. The other question is related to, I want to know how the utility companies or those alliances to judge what is the most best technology or program that in terms of energy efficiency. Do you have, what kind of methodology are you using? What kind of data set? What kind of information available to you so you can make a reasonable judgment of what is in theory or in practice the best program, whether it's no-hanging fruit or what is in practice the most practical for homeowner or for you guys? So.
Yeah, I could start that. To answer your second question, we have a program called Home Transformer where we'll have a contractor come into the home, do a blower-door test, and they'll give the customer a bunch of different measures that they can do on their own and install. And so and they get a really nice report, and it kind of guides them through what's the low-hanging fruit as far as replacing lighting, doing different things like that. So I think that gives them a pretty good guide right away to get going and see where the most value is. Now, on your first question regarding utilities, so conservation is primarily about saving energy, and I don't think it's out of line with the utilities' incentive to sell more energy, because we don't actually make more money on selling more energy. Utilities, at least in Minnesota, where we make money is by having more infrastructure out there. Now, SIP does avoid building that infrastructure, but I think it separates the two a little bit. Also in Minnesota, the state offers a kind of a carrot for the utilities to say, listen, if you promote conservation, we'll give you a separate incentive And so the investor-owned utilities here, we're getting a separate incentive to go ahead and do conservation. But I think it's more than that too. It gives us a chance to interact with our customers and drive customer satisfaction and just develop relationships with our customers. And because, we're seeing more electrification happening all the time. So I don't get so worried about losing sales. I think more about just that relationship with the customer and what's the next solution that we can offer them. So that's more how I look at it.
Sean, choosing his words carefully.
I get a lot of feedback that I'm too transparent.
Oh, really?
You're right. I'd be lying if I told you that we didn't do those calculations of how much the saved energy is worth, in sales to the company. But we do work with, with our regulators and stakeholders to overcome that natural disincentive for utilities to pursue energy efficiency. And I would say that Minnesota has been understanding and has been good about balancing the disincentives with the societal objective of saving energy. And we do find, value in keeping our bills low, being competitive from that stage. If big business is going to move to Minnesota, we want it to go in our territory, not Jason's. Never Jason's. And that's a competitive factor, right, is what our customers are paying in energy. So there are benefits, beyond a pure calculation of sales. So that's important. The best, program for customers today is lighting. It's cheap, easy, and it returns a big benefit very quickly. Tomorrow, I think, in understanding that federal standards, cultural adoption are taking over that space away from the utility programs, which is great. Society's still going to see that savings. It just won't go through our programs. I'd really like to see integrated homes. Homes that not only are the technologies within the home integrated, but that integration is integrated with the utility system in the timing of costs and benefits and carbon and those kinds of things, so that customers are part of the operation of the utility, not just the consumer of the product.
You stole my thunder. Well, I guess from an electric utility perspective, as opposed to the gas side you heard, there are limited opportunities in homes. You have heating, you have cooling, you have lighting, you have appliances. So those are the things we tend to focus on as far as efficiency opportunities as an electric utility. So there's tools out there. As a homeowner, you can go do an online energy audit. We offer those, other utilities offer those, to see where the most benefit is, where the cost effectiveness is, to see, okay, if I want to prioritize these, where does it make sense to start? So there's things out there to help with that, so we try and capture all of that where we can. Limited opportunities, and then on the behavioral side, kind of above and beyond all the technology improvements, we're encouraging customers to not waste the product, to use energy wisely, not leave your lights on, not leave things plugged in to charge when you don't need to. So there's that education part of the behavioral side too. So a mixture of technology improvements and efficiency improvements, and then conservation, behavioral type improvements.
I was just going to speak briefly to your second question about how do we evaluate technologies, or specifically my area of work with emerging technologies. How do we evaluate which ones we're going to pursue, quote unquote? I would say we look at three things. We look at the technical potential, cost effectiveness, which I think are both self-explanatory, but let me know if not. But then third is really just a gut check or experience. So if something has a lot of potential, looks cost-effective, but it would potentially require a drastically different installation or operation, that product might get a little bit more, downgraded as opposed to something that's a simple drop-in replacement for an existing technology. So those are the three ways we kind of evaluate on the emerging technology side.
And I would just add on, maybe on that last comment, I think with this concept of cost effectiveness, and especially as it relates to newer technologies, that's not always, it doesn't always pencil out in the low income segment. And so I think just as maybe as a policy goal or just as a policy question, trying to figure out how to navigate some of these emerging conversations with program delivery in the low income segment. How do we ensure that these programs aren't left out of things like heat pump conversations, things like that, where it might not be cost effective, but we still want to achieve the public policy goal of delivering energy savings to that specific segment. And I think that's a conversation that we'll probably have to have over the next few years.
No, I think that's good, kind of full circle. I was thinking about the public policy objectives and how that aligns with homeowner or business interests. And sometimes, sitting where I sit in the department, I can feel a little disconnected from the end user and thinking about, what efficiency means and to that end user. But, part of why we do what we do for efficiency is that it is a least cost resource, that it is always less expensive, almost always less expensive to avoid generating a kilowatt hour or a therm than it is to generate it. And that we are able to avoid building a lot of infrastructure, generation, transmission, and distribution that is far more costly to the ratepayer through doing these collective efficiency efforts. And so in a somewhat direct, maybe more indirect way, that is aligning with an individual end user interest by looking at the whole of the benefit of efficiency to the system. And so I think that's, I think a lot about the public policy component of all of that. So I think we have another question. Moving on.
Hi, I'm Molly Jana Smith. I work with the City of St. Paul on building energy, and could not have asked for a better way to tee up my question, which is, obviously, given the focus of the conversation, we're talking a lot about state-level energy efficiency policies, and I'm just wondering if any of you have seen local-level policies that have really helped you bring efficiency to your customers better. Just looking for kind of a grab bag is fine.
I can jump in. Absolutely. So we have a Partners in Energy program that I think St. Paul is participating in that looks to align the objectives of the local community with the objectives of the portfolio of programs that we offer. And some of those partnerships have looked like, setting carbon reduction goals that we can help the city execute on, to as small as giving us a little space in the community newsletter, to promote programs for customers to participate in. Things like standards or ordinances are a little squishier, because if a government requires efficiency, it puts us in an awkward position of whether or not we can, our objective is to influence the decision for efficiency, but if someone has already made that decision, they're a free rider. So we've been able to work with cities to provide multiple pathways to getting to efficiency, such that there is that influence. We are able to influence the adoption of efficiency. Things like benchmarking or audits, have been successful in requiring the study to identify the opportunity to then go in and influence the decision for efficiency. So it has been a good partnership, and I think it's an evolving partnership that will find more opportunities in the future.
Yeah, I would agree with Sean. That's definitely evolving. We have two communities that are very active in their local goals. And this, I would say, just started probably in the last year or so where we're seeing this. And it's growing. And the customers, you know, traditionally you just think of individual customer, but now it's growing to be this more collaborative, you know, group of people or a community. And so it's interesting to see that. And, you know, I think, you know, like Shaman is saying, we just have to make sure we're giving them a pathway and make sure that our programs are in alignment with what their initiatives are. And that's what we're trying to do at Otter Tail.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, kind of thinking back to some of our previous conversation about coordination and collaboration, that what we see is that local governments and communities are critical to continuing the success of our overall efficiency policies and working with utilities. That when I think about Otter Tail Power and your service territory and the small communities that you have to have that community engagement and engagement of local units of government, and whether they're adopting specific policies or not, by making those connections and having those collaborations, you're able to better identify what the needs are of those individual communities. They're not all the same. And so from my perspective, that coordination with the local units of government and with those communities is critical for the ongoing success of CEP and our efficiency and clean energy policies.
And Jessica, I would just add, since we're in Minneapolis, I'll add two Minneapolis-specific examples as well. The first one that comes to mind is actually more of a housing policy, not an energy policy, but it has energy implications. And that's the 4D pilot that the city of Minneapolis is kind of working through right now, which actually provides reduced tax liability for building owners in exchange for, essentially for affordability agreements. And then on top of that, so that in itself, I think, you know, allows greater affordability for tenants. But on top of that, owners are encouraged to then go through the Home Energy Squad program. And so there's incentive there to, you know, maintain affordability for tenants, but then also to pursue some of those energy efficiency investments as well. And I think the city is working with Xcel and CenterPoint on that program. The other one that I would mention is the City of Minneapolis's Green Building Cost Share Program, which also provides incentives for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects in the city. And then also, you know, some greater incentives for projects in the city's green zones, which are, you know, lower income, you know, and I think potentially disadvantaged communities in terms of health impacts, things like that. So just, I think a couple of examples there of some city level levers that, you know, really, I think have beneficial energy implications.
Great.
I was just going to riff off of your health element and mention in Oregon, there have been a couple instances where air quality management districts, I believe that's the right word, but they have partnered with utilities to encourage, you know, removal of inefficient wood burning stoves with ductless heat pumps. And so kind of a neat marriage between that outdoor and indoor air quality with energy efficiency.
Okay. Do we have questions? Lola?
Hi, I'm Lola Schoenrick with Great Plains Institute, and I'm interested in the opportunity around the air source heat pumps, which is really interesting to see. And but what I'm curious about is what those people who are heating with electric heat have in their houses now. I imagine them having radiant heating, and what would motivate somebody to get an air source heat pump? You know, if you've got an appliance that's broken, it's an opportunity, of course, to upgrade the efficiency, but so I just don't know that much about what people who heat with electricity, what their heating systems look like today and what that opportunity to actually market to them would look like.
Yeah, I guess I could start with this one. You bring up a good point. So radiant heat, it's very inexpensive. In our service territory, we see a lot of homes, you know, just built more inexpensively, and they'll put that in there, you know, baseboards, different things like that. And so that can be a bit of a challenge because trying to sell them an air source heat pump, we have very significant rebates, but it's still very, very challenging to put that in there. And on the ductless side, it helps because they don't have ductwork, so that is a solution for them, which is nice. We also see a lot of boilers out there though too. And some of them aren't on our off-peak rates. And so we see a little bit of a challenge with, we have a lot of electric heat, but it's on off-peak. And so we have to balance this between trying to get somebody to be, or install a cold climate air source heat pump, but we don't want them to leave the off-peak rates and add to our peak at all. So we really have to balance that as we go forward. And I think there's a solution where a lot of our off-peak customers, they may primarily heat with electric, and maybe they just have propane for those several days of the year that I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. They have a backup just for those days where it's very cold and we're going to control them, okay? And so what I see in the future is maybe as they have to change out their boiler or something, we could put an air source heat pump. They still have that backup propane for just that small portion of the year, but they're still on off-peak rates. They're using less energy. They're still on off-peak, which saves them some money. And they can get through those really cold spells or any time where the prices are high in the market and we have to control them. So I think there is opportunity to both do off-peak sales and also air source heat pumps. But you're right, there's going to be some challenges with a lot of our customers that just have baseboard heating or radiant heating. And how do you get them to take that bigger step for a bigger and more costly system?
Yeah, and I would just add in the Northwest, we call it the displacement rather than replacement approach. So you keep what you had for kind of peace of mind because you are shifting to a very different type of system. So then again, this would be using the ductless as the example. So maybe adding the ductless to a home with baseboards or wall heaters. So you put that system in. So you're not taking anything away. Customer's comfortable with bringing something new. But I'd say there's 4 things that they're getting that they didn't have with that electric resistance heat. They're getting enhanced comfort. Electric resistance heat, especially with baseboards or wall heaters. You've got these individual locations where the heat's radiating, but on the other side of the room, you'll have cold spots. You're getting certainly enhanced efficiency, so your monthly bills are going to be going down. You're going to get much greater control over the system. So typically ductless systems have a remote control. It's a lot easier to control, the temperature and the fan, the adjustment, where the heat's going, a lot more, interaction that you have as opposed to, again, an electric resistance heater that's typically kind of on or off. Granted, it would be operated by a thermostat. And then the 4th, and this isn't to be underestimated, is you get free air conditioning. So that was maybe a non-energy benefit, but pretty significant. And, having done, well over 100 of these inspections back in the day when I started, when a homeowner has gone from electric resistance heat to a ductless heat pump, I've had cookies baked, hugs. It's pretty amazing. The level of satisfaction that homeowners get out of the switch is very high.
Have you, in your data collection and follow-up, found any dissatisfaction where the homeowner says, ooh, this just is not for me, and then reverts back to using the backup fuel source or relies on that primarily as opposed to the new system?
There was one person that was unhappy out of the ones that I physically inspected, but no, in our evaluation of the program, I don't know off the top of my head, but I feel like the customer satisfaction is in the mid-90s. So we don't see much backsliding.
Okay.
I've gone out to homes or there's a lot of installations in assisted living facilities where we've gone out and kind of done education on how to use the remote, and we might have to go back to kind of re-educate, but not much backsliding.
Out of curiosity, do you remember what the reasoning was that they were dissatisfied?
It was unclear. It was this homeowner had a thermometer next to a certain chair in the living room, and because that thermometer didn't get to the same temperature as it did when they had their electric resistance, they felt like the system wasn't right. So it was tricky. We were there with our infrared thermometers all throughout the house. The system was working great. Their bills were like cut in half. it was a tricky situation.
Okay, great. So we've got just a few minutes left to take a couple more questions. Yes, please.
Dave Hosa, involved in energy efficiency financing. I always thought that the state's guaranteed energy saving program was a very elegant way to sell all the things that you're selling. The main differences that I hear is that it approaches it from the demand side and provides a pre-qualified contractor. There's a list of a dozen contractors that you can choose from. And most importantly, the contractors provide the financing. And of course, the state or whomever would be supervising this, but the contractors can do a one-stop shop, turnkey, air source heat pump, whatever is appropriate, and then package these programs and sell them off to pension funds or whatever. In other words, you're using greed or cost savings to drive the program, and the customer doesn't have to agonize over what it is they're going to add or use. Instead, the contractor would work with them to design the program. So is there anything like that going on?
So the Conservation Improvement Program, I think one of the unique things about Minnesota is because we have such a wide variety of utilities and service territories, the program's been designed in a way that utilities really get to design their own programs to meet the needs of their customers and their service territories. And so we don't have a state top-down approach that I'm not administering Excels or SIMPA or Otter Tail's programs. They're designing their own. And utilities are enabled to develop their own programs that do include financing components, and then they can work with other entities like energy service companies to create programs. And so I think we see instances of what you're describing within our utility service territories. And so I think that, the financing piece is definitely a critical piece to ensuring people can access these programs, as well as ensuring that they're achieving the savings. And so I think that as we work to design kind of the next generation of programs, things like what you're suggesting are probably going to be under evaluation, and ensuring from our perspective that they're cost effective, they have appropriate consumer protections, and that they're delivering to meet the objectives of our public policies. Care to add anything? No? Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, my name is Camille, and I'm with the Jefferson Center, and we work with rural communities designing and implementing their energy futures. And I was really interested in the part of the discussion where you talked about building relationships with tradespeople to establish trust and improve the sort of information that folks have about more efficient technologies. And I'm interested if utilities are thinking about how to build sort of or leverage similar relationships with industrial consumers or commercial consumers. One of the communities that I work with has, I think, almost 2/3 or 3/4 of the city's energy consumption is industrial, and they haven't been able to see the improvements that they've made in residential consumers. And so I'm interested in how utilities are thinking about energy efficiency with industrial and commercial consumers. Thanks.
I would just start off here. For Otter Tail, I guess that's the easiest segment, is the industrial segment. I mean, you can go in there with very, very few dollars per kilowatt hour saved. I mean, it's your bread and butter. It's where, a lot of the value is. It's typically we see, the either low income or the residential side is more challenging. So I guess that's a little bit different. Now, in Minnesota, there are some large industrials that are exempted from SIP, and so they don't participate like a typical industrial would.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It is the most cost-effective customer to work with, and so you can bring a lot of resources to bear. Some of the things we're looking at are, in addition to kind of our process efficiency industrial program, which starts with benchmarking Starts with commitments from executives down to operations managers. It's a, 3-year memorandum of understanding going through each system, implementing, and then realizing measuring the effects of those improvements. Now we're looking at cohorts so that industrials can learn from other industrials that have done that kind of thing. So it is a segment with a big return for the investment in efficiency.
Ditto. We've got a lot of prescriptive programs in place to make it easy for those larger customers to participate, and then we have a custom program to kind of capture everything that isn't prescriptive. So we'll look at any opportunity that improves efficiency and saves energy.
Right. I think we're good. I don't see any other burning questions out there. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I know that some of you traveled some distances to join us here in Minneapolis. Thank you to the panelists for coming and talking a little bit about your programs and some of the opportunities that you see in the future. It's an incredibly exciting time to be in this industry, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. I recognize 99% of your faces out there, and so we will be talking more about this as we go. So thank you, everyone. And I believe we have coffee and rolls still. So we'll look forward to some conversation afterwards. Thanks all.